Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowances made for the fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit educational or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair. All topics are for entertainment purposes only. None of the information presented in this video or by B-Girl TV should be taken as fact. Every situation is based on personal experience. The Image Boutique is located in the Centro Comercial de los Pueblos Mall, located in Panama City, just 15 minutes away from Tocumen Airport. We specialize in hair care, wig extensions, and much more. Come visit us. Welcome to our live stream. Guys, if you can hear me, make sure that you are, let me know in the comment section that you can hear me. Welcome our new member, Claudina James. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Guys, if you can hear me, comment in the comment section. I want to make sure that the sound is on and you guys can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me. Can you guys hear me? I know people are still coming in the room. So just let me know if you can hear me so we can start. Guys, can you hear? I know it takes a while for people to get into it. Okay, perfect. Sandra says you can hear me very clearly. Okay, perfect. Okay, so as you guys know, you guys are always, most of you guys are, frequent members of our live stream. And I know people like to trickle in late. It's only, 3 minutes in, but people are going to come in as the time goes on. Hi, Jen. Hi, guys. Glad to see you guys. First and foremost, I want to welcome you guys to the live stream. For those of you who are new here to the channel, we go live every Tuesdays and sometimes Fridays, it depends. And we go live every Tuesday at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Hello. Who was that? Let's see. Who was that? I lost the comment. But so today we have a very special guest, and I know a lot of times when we are talking on live streams, we always talk about people of color, right? But when we talk about people of color, we always talk about Afro-Panamanians or Afro-Antillians or Black Americans, whatever. We always talk about those type of people, but what you guys do not understand is that in Panama, there is a group of brown people that are also considered people of color that are often forgotten about when you think of Central America, right? So when you think of Panama, usually, we have the Afro-Panamanians that are forgotten, but there's also a group of people that are Panamanian. They live here and they too have contributed to Panamanian culture. I'm not talking about the indigenous Indians that are here, but I do want to welcome my guest. His name is Santosh. Okay. Hi, Santosh. Let's give Santosh a round of applause. Okay.
Hello. Hello, Shanna. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here in your YouTube channel.
I'm excited to have you on here also. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a really funny story. It's not really a funny story, but I'm definitely going to give you guys a little backstory. So I was looking for a tutor for my son, right? And at first, the tutor that I had was someone else, and then she ended up leaving to go to the States. And she said to me, well, don't worry, I'm going to refer someone to you. So I said, okay, refer the person over to me. And she's like, yeah, he's really smart. And his name is Santosh. So at first I was just like, okay, I didn't really think of it, right? And so when he actually came to my house, I'm like, do you remember? I was like, are you Indian? Remember?
Yeah,
And
of
he
course.
was like, yeah. And I'm like, I was so confused. And the reason why I was so confused is because, as you guys know, my family is from Cologne. And coming back to Panama as a child, I was always in Cologne. And I've never seen an Indian person in Panama. Like, I was like, wait, like, what's going on? Like, I was so confused. So, I'm gonna. I was just as intrigued the first time that I met him. I asked him like so many questions, and I know that you guys too are gonna ask him a lot of questions. Also, people are still trickling down. They're still coming in. People are always late. They always come late, but it's okay. Better late than never. So I'm gonna give the floor to Santosh, okay? And I want you to just tell us a little bit about who you are, and just tell us a little bit about yourself just before we can dive deep.
Okay, perfect. Well, like I said, thank you for inviting me, having me over. And yeah, that story is completely true. I can certify it. Shanna had so many questions, and she was like surprised to see me there. Like, are you Indian? Like, yeah, I'm Indian. Like, we have so many facial features that are so recognizable at a distance that you already know when someone is from Indian descent. No, so
Right.
let me go ahead and introduce myself first. My name is Santosh Sachanandani. People also have a lot of questions with that last name or the same name because it's long and kind of hard to say until you get the rhythm of it. I'm 23 years old. I'm a licensed psychologist. I work in a school right now as academic coordinator. And well, what you're here for, both of my parents are from India. Both of them are from Indian descent. They lived there most of their life, although now they have moved here and also lived a huge part of their life here in Panama and made it here. And well, I was born here in Panama. I have lived all my life in Panama, but I have gone to India to visit for family trips. But most of my life I have lived here. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that I haven't been part of the Indian culture, which is a big part of my heritage and a big part of who I am right now. And definitely, I cannot go ahead and say that you would get to know me completely if you don't know my Indian side or if you don't know my whole background story.
Okay, so you already answered one of my questions, but one of the questions that I did want to ask you is what made your parents decide to come to Panama out of all places? Like most people that I know that are Indian, they usually migrate either to the US or the UK. So what made them decide to come to Panama out of all the countries in the world? Why Panama?
Okay, that's a good question. Out of all the countries, why did they choose Panama? Where, first of all, it was the place where my parents had contacts. My parents had contacts there here in Panama already. So the first person from my family who came to Panama was my uncle from my father's side. So my uncle came here to Panama looking for better opportunities, better salary, and he came to work with a member from the community who brought him and told him, "You can work at my store. I can give you a job. I can give you a house. I can help you out as a member of the community." So he came 8 years before my father came to Panama for the first time. So once he had already established himself, I'm talking about my uncle, he already had established himself here economically, professionally, and also socially. He had a group of friends from the community. He went ahead and brought my father, which is his younger brother. So then, once my father came, he was still single. He didn't come with my mother or anything. He wasn't with anyone. He just came to work for the same opportunities. of getting a better salary and having a decent lifestyle conditions. No, because in here the conditions were better than what they were in India during those times. And a few years later, my dad goes back to India, goes and meets my mother. It's an arranged marriage because that was the most common thing previously in India, arranged marriages. And well, after they stayed a few months in India, they both decided to come here to Panama and they had their firstborn, which is not me, it's my brother. And then I was born. So in my family would be my brother, who was 30 years old, and me, which I'm 23 years old.
Wow, that is very interesting. So to say the least, I'm going to say that you guys are kind of like the Asians, like the Asian community. You guys support each other, right? I never knew that there was an Indian community. Where are they? Where is this Asian community?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the Indian community here is pretty huge. There are two places in Panama where the Indian community is very huge. Colón, which I'm sure you've seen Indians in Colón, they have a huge community there, and the other one is here in Panama. Now, where do they meet up? Well, there are different places you can meet up. So there are a lot of things we have to discuss in here to understand completely. So I'm going to start
Yeah.
from the beginning. And like you said, when one says Indian, what do you think of? There are two types of people. The ones that think about Asian Indians, the ones from India, the country, or they think about Indians as Native Americans, the ones that are from here. So that's a confusing term. To clarify that, in Spanish, because in Spanish is where it gets more confusing, because you can call me Indian in English and you can call them Native Americans, and it will be completely clear.
Right.
But in Spanish you say indio, tú eres indio. Entonces, how do you say in Spanish for people coming from Indian descent or Indian communities or from the country India? You call them Indostan to clear up the term. Indostan. So that way you can clear up. And now Indostan takes a lot of things. It's not only from the Hinduism religion, but it can also be Sikh religion. It can also be Punjabi. They can also be Gujaratis, which are different types of, let's say, castes where they live on. Even Muslims can be considered Indians. It's all based on where you were born, which is the country India. So India, for example, India is the second country with most Muslims in the world. The first one would be Pakistan, but the second one would be um, India. So people think that because you're Muslim, you are born from Pakistan, which is that's not correct. Definitely, you can be Muslim and be born in India. Muslim is just the religion, the Islamic
Correct.
religion. The Islamic religion. Hinduism is the most prevalent religion in India, but that doesn't mean that there are many other religions. Like I already said, for example, the Sikh one, the Sikh religion. So to answer your question, where can you find them here in Panama? It's not a specific place that you will find them, but you will find them in different types of communities. For example, there's the Indian temple here in Panama, which is in Tumba Muerto. I'm not sure if you have seen it. After you pass Condado del Rey, you can see it on the top. It's on the top of a mountain, and you have to go inside from where it's Hyundai, Petroautos.
Wait, is the thing that looks like an egg? Is that it?
The one that's in the egg, the one that you're saying is in the corredor, right?
Yes, yes. Is that
No,
it?
no, that one's not.
Oh,
That one's not.
okay.
It's when you're coming from Ricardo J. Alfaro, from
Okay.
Condado del Rey, you can go ahead and see it on the top. It's on the mountain. It's a really beautiful temple that just had it was remodeled recently, and you can find them there. There's a huge community there, and there's also another community. For example, in Bella Vista, there's a huge community in the whole Cinta Costera area. San Francisco, a lot of Indians live there as well. Or, for example, Betania, you can also find a lot of Indians. And you won't only find from Hinduism, like I said, you can also find Muslims there. You can also find Sikh. You can also find Punjabis, Gujaratis. There are different castes, many, many, many castes when you search for
Now,
them.
Question. I know that in Cologne they have a lot of Arabs, like Arabics that live in Cologne. Are they would they be considered part of the Indian community or no?
They can be considered part of the Indian community as long as they were born in India. That's the only
Oh,
requirement for you to be considered Indian or from Indian descent, that their parents lived in India.
wow. So it's a little bit. This question I want to ask is because in the states it's a little bit different. Like, okay, so your parents are from India, right? You were born in Panama, so so you're Panamanian. Would you consider yourself more Hindu or more Panamanian?
That's a good question. That's a good question, which I have thought a lot in my life to understand who I really am. And the answer I've come up with is that I feel more identified with the Panamanian culture, of course, because I've lived here all my life and most of my friends are Panamanian. The lifestyle I live is Panamanian, but that doesn't mean that I'm not, that inside of myself, I have learned all the culture, all the tradition, and all the values from the Hindu community. So I would say that it's a mash of both. But which one do I feel identified with most? I would say the Panamanian culture.
Let's go to the comments real quick and see. Alexis S says Hindu temple in Panama. Okay, she's like surprised because of course, I would be surprised too. And then Jen Williams says, "Is it Templo Bahi? Bahai?"
No, actually, it's not Templo Bahá'í. It's just called Templo Hindu. That's the way that you recognize it. And I would encourage all of your followers right now to go ahead and visit that temple. It's beautiful. And it's open. You don't have to pay any type of fee to enter. Doesn't matter what race, religion, gender you are, you can go ahead and visit it. And you can see all the gods and even understand a little bit more about the Indian culture, which is actually really strong here in Panama. I have some interesting facts from history here. Yeah,
One of the things that I did notice is Sol de la India.
yeah,
Okay, Sol de la India is definitely. I'm gonna assume it's owned by Hindu people, right?
yes, it is.
And every time I pass Sol de la India, it's packed. Okay, people are buying incense, people are buying their candles, people are buying everything that you can think of, and it shows how much of a similarity Hindu culture is with Catholic culture. Okay, people really don't understand that it's kind of similar, and I find it very interesting because here in Panama, when a baby is born, they always put the red string around the baby's um was it the left hand? Yeah, the left. They put the string on the baby's hand, and I noticed that in Indian culture they do something similar. Is that true?
Well, in Indian culture, once they're born, they have their own rituals and ceremonies. That first they have to go ahead and take the baby to the temple. It has to be kind of like baptized. Of course, it's not the same term. They have their own term in Hindi, but they have to go through the process of being taken bath by the Maharaj, which would be like the priest, and they do wear strings. They wear red strings because in Indian culture, the color red has a lot of symbolism there. It means a lot of connection as well. And well, the red string, I'm not sure if they wrap it around the like the hand as well, but definitely they do have a lot of ceremonies with when babies are born.
So, what interesting facts do you have about Panama and Indian and Hindu culture? I want to say Hindu because we already specified, and we're talking about you, and you identify as Hindu. So, when I refer to you, I'm going to refer to Hindu because that's what we're talking about.
All right, perfect. So, well, I was researching a little bit about history because I love history, and the first Indians that were documented here in Panama was in 1850. So they came from the Caribbean island. They came specifically from the British West Indies island, and they also came from Guyana, because both of them,
Guyana, we
yeah,
call it
Guyana.
Guyana in the states. Uh huh.
Oh, okay, Guyana. So both of them came from those Caribbean islands because both of those islands were part of the British Empire during that moment. So they had the workers there from India, which were specifically from two parts. Gujarat, and Sindh. Now, Gujarat, that's part of India. That's one of the states from India. And Sindh is what we know as one of the states from Pakistan right now. So as you can see, there is influence from India and what is Pakistan as nowadays. During those time, 1850, I'm talking about the 19th century. So they were brought in by this French company that owned the railroad. They were building the railroad between Colón and Panama. That's why both of them have the most population, most Indian population. And then when the construction of the canal began back in the 20th century, a significant amount of Indians as well migrated here to work in the Panama Canal. So in 1911, there were approximately 90 Indians. That's the official stat. Only 90 Indians in 1911. 85 of them were men and 5 were women. And they represented about 0.2 of the population during those moments. Now, if we count it and we compare it to nowadays, there's approximately 15,000 Indians here in Panama, which represents more than 0.2%, of course, of the population entirely of Panama. So I find that interesting because that makes you understand why they're located specifically only in Colombia and Panama, which doesn't mean that there's no Indians in Chiriquí or in Veraguas. Of course there are, but they're not large communities like we have right here. We have solid communities wherever you go. Like for example, I went to an international school here in Panama, and you could see at least 2 Muslims, 3 Indians, 5 Chinese people, a 3 from Spain or Europe, and from everywhere around the country you can see people from different nationalities, descents, whatever. The interesting fact here is that you can go ahead and understand why they were decided to move to Panama, because they had more opportunities and they were brought in by the British. So of course they decided to stay here and bring their family members as they got the economic opportunities to bring more family members. And the stat line still has been growing. It hasn't fallen down ever from the Indian community. It only keeps on growing, and it's a constant growth of Indians arriving and migrating here to Panama.
Guyanese Brown Sugar said, hey, she's from Guyana.
Oh,
And Radha B Vlog says, hey, Guyanese and Panamanian here. And Guyanese Brown Sugar says, I'm not late. I just heard him mention Guyana. That's so funny. Amazing Oski has a question. He says, considering that you are Panamanian and people are quick to make assumptions based on your appearance, have you ever been a victim of xenophobia in Panama?
that's a great question. I thought about it, and I was prepared for this one because I knew this was going to be a question. And it's definitely the first thing that you come up once you think of someone living in a country that's not part of your descent or your heritage. And it's a common thing to think about. And I gave it a lot of thought, and I have come up with the answer that I haven't been a victim of xenophobia or racism. What I have been, if I would call it this way, is a victim of, let's say, ignorance of some people, because they don't make this racist or hate comments that you see, for example, in that you can
The
see it
US.
clearly in the US. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see it there, or the type that you see in movies where they get bullied or everything. What you can get here as an Indian, what I have felt, is stereotypical comments. So they go ahead and say, "Oh, you own like, do you sell perfumes? Do you sell towels? Do you sell, I don't know, those types? Are you good in math?" I've listened, which I am good in math.
He is. I was just about to say, but you are good in math
I
stuff.
am. I am. So that's why I wouldn't say I have been a victim of xenophobia, but I have been a victim of this stereotypical comments, which I really don't find that offensive, actually. They haven't been that offensive to me. And I have found out that people here in Panama have a good perception of the Indian community. I think that's a good perception all around the world, that they have a good perception of the Indian community. And why do I say this? Because wherever I have gone, people are always interested in asking me, "Hey, where are you from? Where were you born? Tell me, where are your parents from? What do you do? Tell me about your culture, about your food, about your music. What do you listen? What do you watch?" So people are genuinely interested in learning about the culture because it's a really exotic culture and it's something different than what you have here in the Western world, in this Western countries. So I have actually never been a part of being discriminated or being a victim of xenophobia. I've only had good experiences and some stereotypical comments, which, if you don't give a lot of thought to it, well, you're perfectly fine. You won't. It won't ruin your day.
Oski said, "Oh, he gets it." He said, "A victim of being depicted of stereotype." Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now I have a question though because I watch Netflix and I watch The Indian Matchmaker. Right? I love that show, by the way. And I don't watch it because I know you. I've been watching it just because I'm just literally interested in just people's different cultures, right? And you mentioned that your parents were matched. They were. It was an arranged marriage. That's the word is. Being as though now you are in Panama and there is a large Hindu community. Do those rules still apply? Like, are people still being like arranged marriages here in Panama?
I like that. I like that question. It's a very valid question, and it all depends. As everything, the answer is it depends. Here in Panama, it depends on what family or what thoughts or culture your family has. For example, what I mean to say is how open-minded is your family. For example, my family, the one I was born into, is very open-minded. My brother just got married a few months ago with a Panamanian girl here in Panama. While as if you compare it with other families here in Panama, they would never accept an Indian or Indian descent Panamanian being getting married to a Panamanian girl or a Spanish girl or an American girl, whatever. They don't accept that. So is that common here? I feel like the ones that have lived long enough, more than 10, 15 years, they have been adapting to the lifestyle that's here in this Western country as it is in Panama, which is much more open minded, which is much more flexible. And you don't have to follow those strict rules that you have to be arranged marriage or that it necessarily has to be with an Indian girl from India. For example, one of my cousins got married to an Indian girl, but it was not an Indian from India specifically. She was from Spain. She is from Spain. She was born there. So it's kind of the mashup there where you get from both cultures. You can get from both cultures. But arranged marriages, that's pretty common still in India, in the country. They still do that. They still perform that a lot. But right here in Panama, it's been the stat line has been lowering down. It has been lowering down. People are more autonomous on their decisions, and parents, Indian parents, are a little bit more flexible right now with their kids. So they let them get married with other cultures, other ethnicities that are not only the Indian ethnicity.
Now back to the Indian Matchmaker again because I remember I was watch. Do you watch that show? Do you even know what that show is on
No,
Netflix? You should definitely.
I've seen it on Netflix, but I've never actually watched it.
You should watch it. I mean, well, I don't think you'd be interested in it because it's your culture. But for someone who doesn't know the culture, of course, I'm like, oh my God, like really? But one thing that I did notice is that there was a girl from Guyana on there and then there was a guy from India. And she was saying that how because she's from Guyana, she's not really considered an Indian because she wasn't actually born in India. So does that apply for you too? Because yeah, obviously physically you have all the Hindu features, right? Your name, but you weren't technically born in India. So would Indians still classify you as an Indian even though you weren't born in India?
Oh yeah, for sure. They would still classify you mostly because of my facial features, as you can see. They would recognize me right away, and they would know I'm Indian as well because of my name, my last name, and well, my knowledge that I don't have that much that I would say of the Indian community. Like I'm not an expert there because I wasn't born there or lived my whole life there, but the knowledge I have definitely keeps me up in the community. And it doesn't matter if you weren't born in India, if both of your parents, as it is on my case, were born in India and you were brought into a house where the lifestyle, the culture, you still follow the traditions, because I still follow them. My parents still pray here every single day. They still go to the temples. They still go ahead and stay in touch with the community. So that's why I still feel identified with the Indian culture. And I can still say I am an Indian. I would say I'm Panamanian Indian because I would put Panamanian first, like I said, because I have had more influences from that side. But the Indian part is still right there. I would never go ahead and say, no, I'm 100% Panamanian. No, I would never say that because it would take away part of the self that I have integrated inside of me. So yeah, and for example, I can give you the case or the case, yeah, where I have a friend whose father, he is Indian. He's completely Indian, 100%, but the mother was born here in Panama. So he is a mix, 50-50 in terms of blood and heritage and everything that we're talking about. And he doesn't feel identified with the Indian community at all. Like his parents, well, the father keeps on going to the Indian community, and he's still in touch with them. But the mother never actually got in touch with the community. She never got in touch with the traditions. She never changed her religion. She never did that anything, and that's perfectly fine. They're still together, and that doesn't matter because we're not as orthodox as other religions with the terms of you have to be Hindu, you have to marry a Hindu, you have to do everything as this. No, we're more open-minded in that sense, and that's something I really appreciate because, like I said, it has transformed my thought process as well. But for example, sorry, he does not feel identified with the culture at all because he was never taken into that part of the culture. He was never
Right.
involved in the community. I have always been involved in the community, and even though I don't do it as much right now because of different reasons, most of it being time and availability, I still go ahead and go to the temple sometimes. I still go ahead and go to the Indian festival sometimes, which they do celebrate here in Panama.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
When is that? When is the Indian festival?
Actually, there's a festival going on right now here in Panama in the Indian temple, which I'm telling you. Again, I repeat, it's in Ricardo J. Alfaro. You can just Google Templo Hindu, and you will find that. You will find that Indian temple right there. And it's on the city, it's easy to go. And the festival that is going right now, it's a religious festival, but definitely you can see the most authentic part of the culture, if that's what you really want to go ahead and see, on the festivals, because they follow still the traditions to 100% of the letter. They still keep involved with that. And the festival that's going on right now is called Navratri. That's a festival that's basically worshiping the female version of God. Okay, because I want to clarify this as well. Indians are polytheist. I think it's it. Is yeah, which means basically that they believe in the existence of more than one God. Okay, so here in this festival, it's the festival dedicated to all the female, or let's call it the most important female versions of God, which are nine of them, which are celebrated, and each day is specifically dedicated to one of those goddesses. And they go ahead, and what do they do there? It's called dandiaras, which is basically kind of this dance, which I did. They go ahead and you have this two sticks in your hand, and kind of you have to go ahead and clash it a person that's in front of you, and then you go ahead and switch with the next person, and it's like a dance. You have to go ahead and have the rhythm, have the style, and dance at the same time that you're clashing the sticks, and then you go ahead and you go with the next person and go ahead and dance and do the movement again. So everyone runs up in a huge circle, like more than 300, 400 people in the circle, and you go ahead and go dancing with everyone on the circle.
This is so interesting because a lot of what you're telling me, it kind of reminds me of the Yoruba tradition, which was African, West African Yoruba, which is now, I won't say it's now, but here in Panama, they call it Santeria, right? It kind of is similar because they are worshiping different gods, right? And each month and each day, they have a specific day that's geared to specific gods, and they do similar things. But to me, what I find interesting is that that in your culture is acceptable, right? But in this culture is kind of considered taboo. I mean, it's not the same, but it is very similar based on what you're explaining to me. So I find that very, very interesting that you're saying, and I would love to actually go to one of these festivals to actually see. I just haven't, like, they don't promote it. Like, I know that they promote like the Chinese New Year's and like the Chinese festival, but I've never really seen any like publication for the Indian culture. So this is super, like, I'm just like, wow, like, this is so interesting, like, for me. Amazing Oski is asking, is the Indian community close in Panama?
Yeah, they're very close. They still keep on supporting each other. Most of the Indians actually keep in touch with their community. So what do I mean to say by that? Let's say, for example, my parents can go ahead and just go ahead and hang out with any other Indian that they know without no problem there, and they can go ahead and have their own meetings, and they can go ahead and have their let's say go to a restaurant and have fun. They can also go ahead. There's movies designed here in Panama. Not movies designed, sorry, that's not the correct term. There are movies that are brought from India, from Bollywood here in Panama, and they put in Multicentro. Yeah, in
What?
Multicentro. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah, they go ahead. Well, I think Multicentro doesn't bring them anymore. I think it's Pacific Center, the one that's in
Yes,
Antigua.
yeah. I seen advertisements there.
And I
I've
think
seen
there's
advertisements.
and I think there's actually a movie right now in cartelera in the previews of that's of Indian descent from Bollywood. So to answer your question, amazing Oski, it is close. It is close. Of course, like I said, it all depends. The answer in most of the cases, it depends. Because the case that I told you about my friend, for example, he doesn't go ahead and hang out with anyone from the Indian community, and that's okay. That's just not the way he was brought up, and that's not he doesn't feel identified with the culture, for example. But me, I can go ahead and hang out with the Indian community without no problem.
Now, I don't think a lot of people know this, but there was a Miss Panama, I think it was 2022, that she actually was born in India, and she won for Miss Panama to represent Panama in Miss Universe, right? I don't know how to pronounce her name, so I don't want to even try to pronounce it because I know I'm not going to say it right. So can you say it right? You know who I'm talking
Go
about?
ahead. Yeah, yeah, I know her, but I'm not sure.
It's like Mehr Eliezer, Mayor Eliezer.
Mary Eliezer. Ah, okay, Mary Eliezer. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was actually born in India, right? But then I'm assuming she moved to Panama, and she represented Panama in Miss USA. I mean, Miss Universe, sorry. She represented Panama in Miss Universe. How excited was the Indian community when they found out that she was picked to represent Panama?
Well, actually, that was a great honor because I do remember that moment. Yeah, it was a few months ago or a few years ago. Like it was very recent, and people
Yeah.
were actually really really excited to see a part of the Indian community representing Panama, because she represents, because I remember her listening to her speak. She represents what Indian culture and Indian values are for us, for the community, which are respect, tolerance, equality, unity, diversity. And she brought all of those subjects to topic once she was there in Panama in the Miss Universe.
Universe, yeah.
Yeah. So definitely people were excited. People were like, yeah, we're representing. We got someone from Panama,
Yeah.
from the Indian
She,
community.
Morris Campbell, I think he came in late. He said, "What is the census of Indian community in Panama lately? When I was a child, they used to live along the Avenue Central, Avenida Central."
Yeah. The census lately, I would say, like I said at the beginning, it would be approximately 15K, 15,000 Indians here. Whether they're Indian descents already, which are Panamanian Indians, or whether they're migrants from India, immigrants from India. They live, a lot of the community lives in Avenida Central. You can find a huge part of the community, and that's part of the Gujarati community there in Avenida Central. Now here's another interesting fact. So this is what I was telling you when I say that there's a strong influence of the Indian community here in Panama. There's a statue in Avenida Central, in a very recognized place, almost in the center of La Central, of Mahatma Gandhi, who of course was a huge leader of the country and helped them get the independence from the British and guided them to a peaceful revolution, which is definitely the hardest thing you can go ahead and do. Because revolution, you can go ahead. People following you, it's very hard. Overall, if they're following you with a peaceful revolution, that's incredible. And they dedicated a statue to him right there in Avenida Central with all of his quotes, with some of his most recognized quotes. And there's also another statue of Mahatma Gandhi, which is kind of like they mixed it up with the tree and a statue. I'm not really clear how that is. But in Universidad de Panama, you can go ahead and see them in the campus, another statue of Mahatma Gandhi. So as you can see, there is a strong influence, and still a huge part of the community, of the Gujarati community specifically, live in Avenida Central, which is Cinco de Mayo, what we know as Cinco de Mayo.
Which is what I would consider Brownsville in Brooklyn. Morris Campbell said Gandhi statue is located in Calle 3 de Noviembre, right? Across from Casa Miller.
Okay.
I have another question. Is there I feel like I'm so out of touch, and this is why I like having these type of conversations with different people that's not like me. I mean, we're the same because we're both human, but I mean, culturally, we're different, right?
Yeah.
Are there Indian restaurants in Panama? Do you guys eat roti?
Yeah, we eat roti, we eat naan. I personally advocate for naan. I like it better than rotis because I can have rotis here in my house. When I go to restaurants, yeah, my mom cooks Indian
I'm
food.
gonna have to come to your house to get roti because what you don't know is that in New York there's a huge Trinidadian and Guyanese community. Well, where I'm from Brooklyn, where I grew up in Brooklyn, right? And they are Indian Trinidadians and Indian Guyanese people. And the Trinidadian restaurant, and I've been to Trinidad also once. I've been to Trinidad before. And they eat roti. They eat chana. Do you guys eat chana too?
Yeah, chana. Chana.
Yeah. Of course, I'm not gonna say it like you, but they eat chana, they eat roti. So growing up, I had a lot of friends that were Caribbean, right? They were from Guyana. They were even Jamaicans. They have Jamaican Indians. They have Guyanese Indians. They have Trinidadian Indians. And when you go to their house, they always offer you roti. And for me, I love roti. Me and my mom, we love roti. So what I would do is when I go back to the States, I will always buy a whole bunch of roti and bring it back with me and freeze it and then make my curry chicken to eat it with the roti. Do you guys eat it that way too?
Yeah, we eat it that way. And Well, I have a few interesting facts. I can tell you the restaurants as well, but there's also Indian supermarkets here in Panama. So you can go ahead and buy those rotis as well frozen, and you don't have to fly all the way to US to get
What?
it.
Where is this? Where is this?
Yeah, yeah. So the Indian supermarkets, I know two of them, which
Uh
one
huh.
of them is called King's Food, that's located near, let's say, close to Via España. You can just
Okay.
Google it and it will come out. King's Food.
Uh huh.
It's close to Via España. And there's another one that's called American Indian Super or American Indian Outlet. I'm not sure the exact name, but it's located in close to Transísmica. Once you go ahead and reach to the end of Transísmica, and you see the hospital that's there is called Santa Fe. No, I'm not even sure how that's called. I owe you that one. But there are
I
two
could put it in ways. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah. So there you can go ahead and get all the products that you want from India. You can go ahead and they have a lot of variety there. Of course, it's not going to be like an Indian supermarket, but you can go ahead and get rotis. You can get the bhajis, which the bhajis are basically sauces with the ingredients that come on top. For example, the meat, the chicken, the fish. You can go ahead and get the sauces. You can get basmati rice, which is also really important in the Indian traditional food. You can get naan. You can get frozen stuff as well. Vegetarian, non-veg as well, and yeah, you can find a lot of the ingredients that you need to prepare Indian food in those. Actually, you can find all of them.
I'm so like shocked because even like when I make curry chicken, even though I do know that curry chicken is Indian, but in Caribbean and Afro Panamanian, Afro Antillians, which is Panamanians that are descendants from Caribbean people, that's like obviously you know my parents. They are from Cologne, but they are from descendants of Caribbean, West Indian descent. So we do make a lot of curry, but obviously we don't make it the same way as you guys make it. But all those ingredients, I literally have to, when I go to New York, I have to go stock up on the curry, buy roti skin, buy all these things to bring it back to Panama with me because I had no idea that Panama had roti. And my mom is somewhere in here, and I don't know if she's still in here, but she was in here. So, people, if you are Caribbean and you're moving to Panama and you eat roti, he just gave us some important information. Like, I am totally shocked that I can now get roti. I'm going to go tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And it's like round and everything, and you know how
Yeah.
they roll it out? And really? So, how do
Yeah.
you warm it up? The same way?
You can heat it up either in the oven or in a pan, or you can go ahead and heat it up in the microwave as well, whichever way you prefer. And I got you the name of the second super, which I said. So the first one is King's Food, and the second one is called Super Americano. Ironic name. You would never think it's an Indian grocery store, but it is an Indian grocery store. And yeah, definitely there you can get everything frozen, or you can get the ingredients to prepare it fresh from home.
Yeah, but you know, you have to have a skill to make roti. Not
Yeah.
anybody knows how to make roti. Like that's like a special. I've seen an Indian, not an Indian. I've seen a Trinidadian Indian making roti, and it's like a whole thing. Like you have to have like a special kind of stick thingy to even
Yeah,
make it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
You
you
can
have to
get
have
it
like
in
a.
in Sol de la India as well. Mm.
Yeah, well, this is like so. Who is like the person like that? Because you okay? So like usually, what I'm trying to explain is, for example, like for the Afro Panamanian culture here in Panama, the Afro Antillian Panamanian, they have a group of people that they call themselves the Seman, which is they're a group of elderly people who are descendants of people who built the canal and et cetera and et cetera. And they are the ones that are in charge of doing like etnia negra and things of that sort. So who is there like a group of like a community leadership within Panama like an Indian community leadership within Panama that organize all these things and are in charge of keeping the community together?
Yeah, there's an Indian community which is called Sociedad Indostana Panameña, and that's the community that keeps it all together. They bring in together the Sindhis, the Gujaratis, the Punjabis, the Muslims don't exactly come together with that sociedad, but they could form part whenever they wanted to. It's not like it's exclusively only to everyone except Muslims. Not at all. Just that they have their own community and their own uh, society apart from that one. But the one that comes together is Sociedad Indostana Panameña. I'm not sure if they organize everything like to keep everyone in touch, but definitely they spread out the messages. So hey, whatever you need to buy a grocery store. There's this new place called Superamericano, and they keep in touch too for the festivals. They keep in touch for meetings. They keep in touch. There's also one called Damas Hindus Panameñas, which is basically for women, only for women. That one is exclusive. Only Indian women can form part of that. And they organize activities as well. They organize yoga activities, meditation, their dinners, brunch, meetings, those types of activities they organize right there.
So can anybody go to these activities, or is it only exclusive for the Indian community?
I believe that the one, for example, the one that is Dama Hindus Panameñas, that's only exclusively for women, and that you have to be Indian to form part of that one. The one that's Sociedad Indostana Panameña, usually when they broadcast their messages and they go ahead and have activities, anyone can go ahead and join those activities. There's no restrictions there.
Now, as far as language, because I am in India, what language do they speak in India? What's the
It's multilinguistic. There's too many languages there to mention there. But let's say that the most common one is Hindi. That's the official
okay?
language of India.
So your parents spoke Hindi,
Yes.
right? And then they moved to Panama, which Panama is a Spanish-speaking country. How were they able to adapt?
That was a tough part of the transition process. Like those are two different languages completely. It's not like you can go ahead and say like, okay, Spanish and French, they're both romantic languages from previously. No, these ones are totally different. So it was actually really hard at the beginning for both of my parents. Well, my father had already a few years here in Panama, more than my mother, like 8 years more than her. So for him, the transition process was a little bit easier because he had part of his family here with his brother and his younger brother as well. They were together, so they could go ahead and start learning. And as my uncle was here previously, he could teach him a little bit of the language as well. But now for my mother, when she came here, first of all, like you remember, it's an arranged marriage. So
Right.
so she didn't really know my family, my father's side of the family all that well. Actually, she only knew them for a couple of months before she moved here into Panama. So she didn't have a lot of support in the transition here, other than my father and his family here. But but she started learning by going out. She went to the supermarket, to the grocery store, and she tried to talk because she spoke English when she came here to Panama. So Panama, thank God, it's kind of a bilingual country because not everyone speaks English, but people can defend themselves or at least communicate the basic needs with that. So she started talking English, and from there on, she started learning Spanish. I think that was a great part of the help that she already knew how to speak English, and the transition from English to Spanish is not as abrupt as Hindi to Spanish without
Right.
no in between.
Now, did she teach you this? Like, do you know how to speak the language? Because I find like a lot of times when you have parents that migrated, for example, My grandmother was Panamanian. My mother is obviously Panamanian, and but her nieces, they all spoke English, but their kids, like my cousins, they don't know how to speak English at all, right? But everyone before them, and then me and my sister, we speak English, but that generation, they don't speak English at all. So for you being of Indian descent and your mother speaking her primary language, her first language was, how do you say it again? Hindu?
Hindi.
Hindi?
Hindi.
Hindi. Did she teach you guys, or like not force you guys, but did she make it that you guys had to learn that language?
Well, I feel like she didn't even have to pressure us into learning the language. Personally, the way I learned how to speak Hindi, because I do speak Hindi, I'm not advanced there. I would say I'm like let's say low intermediate or intermediate. I'm between those. I can understand completely if we're talking, but if I have to go ahead and well, I cannot write. The written part it's totally different. That's very hard to do. But the way I learned how to speak Hindi was just listening to my parents talk. Both of my parents started talking, and they spoke between them Hindi, and I went learning and learning. I also went for about a year and a half or 2 years to Hindi classes here in Panama. Part of the community had a program, and they still have the program for kids where they teach them about religious traditions. They teach them about food. They teach them the language. Uh, they teach costumes as well, and part of the ethnicity and the culture from India. All the myths, all the traditions, all the religious stories, the sacred book, and that's how I learned. But primarily, I would say I learned not from the classes where I went. Of course, they helped me. They helped me understand, but I learned from basic, basic, uh, basic listening skills from my parents.
Now, how important is it to preserve the Hindu culture here in Panama?
It is important, and I actually feel that that's something we should work in together, and we should do it right away, because what I have seen from my experience, and I can even tell my own experience, is that I feel that the kids that are being born right now, and the generations that are with me and the ones that are coming right now, um, they're not giving it that much of meaning to the tradition, to the culture, to the knowledge that they should be giving it. And it's the decision of each one of them, and it's the decision of the family, of the parents, which is perfectly fine. But I feel like it should not be forgotten. Like you should know where your roots are from, at least for general knowledge and general culture, like we're doing right now. Because at the end of the day, it's a community that supports one another. That's why communities are so important. They support each other in their difficulties, in their tough times, in their happy times as well. And I feel like it has been losing importance during this last 20, 30, 20, 15, 10 years. And parents are not actually teaching their children these traditions, which are part of essentially the Indian culture.
Interesting, interesting. Now, I know you're only 20 something years old, but when you have children, because I'm going to assume you have children, are you going to make sure that they are aware of the culture as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. I have given that some thought. And before, I used to think like, okay, I'm not sure if I really want to put them all the information, give them like involve them so much in the community. But now I have seen the importance of it. And like I said, it's not a thing that we have to go ahead and pressure the kids into forming part of the religion or part of the tradition or the festivals. What I do think it's important is that they have the knowledge of those. Like at least, okay, you have to learn about your culture, where you came from, and if you don't want to follow it, that's perfectly fine. I don't have no issue with that. but at least need to know where you came from.
Right, exactly. That's super good to know. Guys, if you are interested in learning how to speak Spanish, because I know there's a couple of people, and even the people that are going to watch this on the replay, that are interested in learning Spanish, Santosh is a tutor. He teaches Spanish, he teaches math, he teaches all languages, and he's really, really good because he has patience. I'm sorry. Me personally, he is my son's tutor. He is his math tutor. And I just wanted to put that out there before I forget that if you guys are interested in tutoring service, please contact Santosh. I'm actually going to leave his information in the community tab on my YouTube channel. Okay, his phone number is going to be there. So if you know someone or if you want to take classes just to brush up on your skills in Espanol, I will leave his contact there so you guys can contact him. Okay, Amazing Oski asks, is there an Indian school in Panama?
Uh, well, there's not, and thank you for that, Shana. Yeah, I do give tutoring classes of almost any subject in school, as well as English and Spanish classes, and I also give psychological counseling because, like I said, I'm a licensed psychologist, so I can also offer those services if anyone is interested. And well, to answer your question, Amazing Oski, is there an Indian school? I did my research and I found out that there's a school called Escuela República de la India, Republican School of India, but it's not for Indian children only. It's actually a school that most of the population is not even Indian right now. It was just they just dedicated that name because, like I said, the Indian community has a strong influence here in Panama. And I know there's a school called Lincoln Academy where a lot of Indian part of the Indian community is in that school. Also in the international schools, for example, I went to Oxford International School. There is a large, like I said, there's about 3 or 4 students that are Indian per grade per year. So it's not that we have a specific school where they only go, although Lincoln Academy, like I said, has a high percentage of Indians there. Um, although although there's no school, there are some schools, the international and the private one, that have a more part of Indian students there.
That's so crazy. That's so funny that you went to Oxford because that was one of the first schools that I saw when I came to Panama to put Amir into school years ago. But it was the one that was in the financial district. But he didn't like it. Amazing Oski says, "Wait a minute. I am mental health in clinic counseling also. Santosh, can we be in touch, please?"
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, I'm gonna send Shanna my flyer if I didn't, but there you can have my contact and we can get in touch. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So he's gonna present me with the information. I'm gonna put it in the members tab. I mean, not the members tab, in the community tab. Sorry, guys, so that you guys can be in contact with Santosh as well. Morris Campbell says, "I know that the United States have a strong Indian immigration. How is it in Panama?"
Okay, here in Panama, the immigration has always stayed constant. Although I did my research as well, and I saw that the flow is not as high. Let's say the estimated amount of Indian immigrants coming into Panama per year, you could say it's about 500 approximately. That's just a rough number right now. I'm throwing, it's not facts, but the way it has been growing, it could be around 500 or a little bit less per year. But what has maintained over the course of the years is the strong immigration in the sense that it has never ever stopped. People just keep on coming, and it's really hard actually for an Indian community to leave Panama once they're here. That's an interesting fact because I think about it and I don't see many Indians leave the country. They just stay or bring more Indians, like more family members from the India or wherever they're from.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
I think like something really important is that you have to feel comfortable in the country that you live in, and Panama is a melting pot. What do I mean when I say melting pot? Because I had to research this term as well, because I was thinking Panama in Spanish you always say Panama es un crisol de razas, and in English I was wondering how do you say crisol de razas. I'm not sure if you have another term to describe that, but when I looked it up in internet it says in the US they use melting pot.
It's a
So
melting pot.
so Panama is a melting pot in the sense that where you can go ahead and it's so inclusive in the sense that you can find Chinese, Indian, Muslims, Jewish, Christians, from Latin America and South America, from the US, from Canada. You can find immigrants from all over the world here in Panama. I feel like we have been so well accepted here in Panama that people just like it. The opportunities are good. The respect is good. Um, the education, the health, everything could improve. Of course, I'm not saying it's perfect in the country. It's far from perfect, but it's comfortable and and it feels like home. That's why I would think that people don't want to go ahead and leave, because Panama is my home, and I'm sure many other hundreds of Indians feel like Panama is their home, especially the ones that were born here. In fact, fun fact, my parents, I feel like I have involved them so much in the Panamanian culture as well. Like they have brought me up so much from the Indian culture, but I have also taught them a lot from the Panamanian culture. And now in my house, mostly we speak English, Spanish, and Hindi. We speak all three languages, but it's not only like we speak Hindi there. My parents, when they talk between themselves, they talk English, sometimes Spanish, or they talk Hindi as well.
That's so interesting. Panama Black 507 PTY says, which ethnic group is more numerous in Panama, Jamaicans or Hindu? I would say Jamaicans. I think Jamaicans are more prevalent, but Hindu people have more of a what's the word? They have more of a community, a structured community. Okay. And when I say structured community, I mean that they are so organized that they are able to have their own temples. They're able to have their own festivals. They're able to do these things. I think with Jamaicans, they come to Panama and they don't really, not like back in the day. Like back in the day in Cologne, the Jamaican population in Cologne, people knew that they were Jamaican. They had their own schools. They were organized. But the new era Jamaicans, this is just my personal opinion, okay, that when they come, they're not organized to that point where they're organizing to get themselves acclimated to the country in which they'll be included. For instance, we have Carnival, right? They don't include themselves in Carnival. They don't include themselves in Etnia Negra. They don't even try to have their own celebration like other cultures do. Like Asian people have, like I said, they have Chinese New Year and they have this big old celebration in front of Chinese restaurants. Jamaicans don't do that. Jamaicans don't even have their own restaurant here in Panama. There is a Jamaican restaurant here in Panama, but it's owned by a Panamanian whose descendant is Jamaican. But to say that a Jamaican actually owns something in Panama, I have not seen that. If someone else has seen that, please correct me. But me personally, I haven't seen it. Have you seen it, Santosh?
No, I haven't. And honestly, I couldn't answer that question because I don't know much of the Jamaican community here in Panama. Like you said, it's not like it's well structured as well, for example, as this Indian society, that there's literally a society created for the Indian community here in Panama, as well as temples and more like traditional things that identify the culture from that point of view. So I don't know if I can go ahead and say that there's more Indians or Jamaicans here in Panama.
The only reason why I know this is because I have the store, I have the business, and all type of people come into the store. I've had Indians come into the store looking to buy wigs. I have a lot of Jamaicans that come into the store. I have had people from Trinidad and Tobago. I have had people from Antigua. I have had so many different groups of people that come into the store, but majority of the immigrants that come to the store, they're either from Jamaica. A lot of them are from Jamaica. And I'm not talking about Panamanians. I'm talking about foreigners, right? So a lot of them are Panamanians. I mean, a lot of them are Jamaicans, I'm sorry. And then they have people, a small group that are from like Cali, Colombia, and Dominican Republic. So that's what I noticed. And not even Dominicans, like Dominicans, Venezuelans, all these other people, other foreigners don't have a structured community like the Jewish people have a structured community here in Panama. Indians have a huge structured community here in Panama. The Afro-Panamanian culture is now becoming a structured community here in Panama. But a lot of these other cultures that come here, they don't necessarily have a structured community. Asian people also have a structured community. I forgot. I said that already, but just to put that out there. Panama Black 507 PTY says, my family is from Cabo Verde in Curundú, and I only know one Indian family in Panama personally. Morris Campbell says, Panama is a true melting pot. It's a true melting pot. In the USA, it's more like a mosaic. Richard Allen said, peace, queen. Peace onto you, king. Panama Black says, interesting to learn about all ethnic groups that make up our Panama. Exactly. Like, for me, like, with my platform, like, I just did not want it to be, we're talking about Afro-Panamanian stuff all the time. Like, there's also other people that reside in Panama that make up and contribute to Panama also. And I feel like if more of us learn and had conversations with people from different cultures, you will realize that we're really all the same, right? So there shouldn't be racism, shouldn't exist. Xenophobia shouldn't exist. If we just branch off and get to know other people instead of sticking to us, you will get to learn other people, get to learn other people's cultures, and you'll realize that we're really all the same, if you think about it. Morris Campbell says, Indian back in the day used to have their own neighborhood, the whole Central Avenue from Santa Ana to Bella Vista. Colombians do. I have not seen, I don't know, have you seen a Colombian organized community? Because I haven't. Have you?
I've seen a lot of Colombians here in Panama, but like a community structure, never heard about it. It would be interesting to see if they have like a society or like a place where they all meet up specifically. So when we say structure, I guess that's what we mean, that it has to have like not necessarily a physical location place, but definitely like a society and community, and they do these activities together where all Colombians know, they all get in touch and work together to provide these activities. So I've never heard about it, but it would be definitely interesting in listening. And I wanted to answer one of the questions which was there, which said that if there are any Indian Panamanians like me in politics in the moment, and there is actually one of I know her, the one that's into politics right now. She is Minister of Government. Her name is Janina Tewani, and she's currently working in the government of Panama as a minister. So yeah, that's a huge step, and she's not the only one. She's the only one I know right now in the moment into politics. But there has also been the director of national security of the police. He had Indian descent, as well as a vice minister, which I don't remember the name right now. But currently, the minister of government, she is from Indian descent. One of her parents is from India.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting to know. Someone says, does anyone else shop Sol de la India? Anyone else? I shop there. I love a good incense. So I'm always in Sol de la India. I love incense. Love it. Okay. So I shop in Sol de la India, and a lot of other Panamanians shop in Sol de la India, especially the one in Los Pueblos, because whenever I'm in Los Pueblos, Sol de la India is like this. Yeah. It's like this always. Okay.
And an interesting fact is that it's usually more full of Panamanians rather than Indians. If you
exactly,
or people from other cultures, but Indians like don't shop there that much, I guess, because Like they go once in a blue moon and they take everything they need and they don't come back like for like a year or something.
What usually do they buy from Solila, India?
Well, incense is a big part of the things that my parents buy. They also buy different types of candles. They also buy plates because you can get those plates. For example, this type of silverware, this glass is traditional in Indian community, and like they like to use silverware a lot. So they go ahead and buy that. You can also go ahead and buy, let's say, like the thing we said to make
To
the
make the
rotis.
roti, yeah.
Yeah, for example, those types of instruments you can go ahead and get there.
What kind of incense do they buy? Like, what is the incense for? I mean, I know what incense are for, but in Indian traditions, what would they use Indians? What would they use incense for?
Well, once you're in the prayers or in the moment that you're performing the prayers, it's of costume to put it's to put the incense there and leave it burning while you are praying. And once you finish, you go ahead and do 3 rounds with it from right to left. So it's basically tradition and culture. Plus, the smell is good.
It's
I've
really
gotten
good.
used to it, so I like it.
I love the smell of incense, especially canela. Like that's my favorite. That's my favorite one. Morris Campbell says every Panamanian living in the U.S. shops there. You can buy mugs, Panamanian keychains, very good prices. Yeah, but I don't think people really shop there for mugs and keychains. I think mostly when I'm there, I always see people buying candles and incense. Like
Candles
that's what
and
I
incense,
mostly
yeah.
see. Amazing Oski says to Morris Campbell, yes, you're right. My mom likes to buy manteles de Solena in Solena, India. One thing that I did want to mention is that the owner of Pandora is actually Indian,
Yes.
right? Pandora here in Panama is owned by Indians, and I also realized like a lot of Indians own jewelry stores, or they either have and the wives or the wives, they usually have like jewelry lines. How is it so easy for them to come to Panama and open up businesses? So easy.
Well, I'm not sure if it has been easy. I think it takes a lot of hard work and like first the first thing is first you need income or you need like a base like money or fund that you're going to use to create your shop. So this is a point that I did want to talk about. Indians are usually known for working in business. That's their main focus, wholesale and or retail. If we talk about wholesale, we talk about Zona Libre de Colón. It's full of Indians there. They sell at good prices, cheap prices, and they sell a lot of merchandise there. Perfumes, they sell alfombras, they sell different types of things there in Colón. If we're talking about wholesale and retail, which is mostly here in the city, they sell, like you said, jewelry, or in my experience, other than perfumes, the other thing would be electrodomestic. Let's call it TVs, let's call it cell phones, let's call it laptops.
Panafoto.
Panafoto
Panafoto.
is the owner is an Indian of
Yes.
Panafoto. So so it hasn't been easy for them. Like Panafoto didn't become what it has become right now. The owner of Panafoto was here before my uncle arrived here in Panama, and my uncle arrived in around approximately 1980s in the 1980s. So you can think about how long his trajectory has been in order to set up such a big shop as and famous shop as Panafoto is.
Yeah, I'm always in Panafoto every week. Morris Campbell says that the Indians lend each other money. I don't know how true that is. What do you think, Santosh?
They lend each other money.
I think what he's saying is like when you see like when Asians come, they go to the Asian bank. Asian people are usually set up. So you bring someone else, and then someone else in their family will give them money to start a business. Oh, well, that's what people believe. I don't know because I. This is what we speculate. Then they'll start a business, right? And then so basically, like they will help each other out to start businesses. Because if you ever notice, like when an Asian comes to Panama, they never work for anybody. They always start a business. And in order for you to start a business, you need capital. So where are you getting the capital from? So I think that's what he's saying by they lend each other money. Like another Indian will give someone the capital to be able to open up whatever business. I have never seen an Hindu working for anybody, like in the banks. Only like second generations, but like the ones that come directly from India, I have never seen. They always own their own businesses, just like Asians. Chinese Panamanians or Chinese people, they always own their own businesses. Would you say that that's true?
Well, in this case, I would say that it's not exactly lending the money per se. What happens is two scenarios. One of them can be, like you said, they lend them the money so they can have the capital to open up their own shop. Or the most common scenario, what happens when you fly in someone from India and you bring them here, call it a family member or a close friend of the family or whatever, they usually start working for you. For example, if I bring someone over from India, they start working for me in my shop. That's how they save up. They go saving up, saving. Of course, they help in, let's say, finding a place to live in, helping out with the food or the supplies or setting everything up. They get the help from there. But in most of the cases, I feel like it's you start working for an Indian, part of someone from the Indian community, and they go ahead and pay you. Of course, you go save up, save up, save up until you can go ahead and create or build your own shop. That's what I have heard from my experience.
Okay. Richard Allen says, "Is there a lot of spirituality in Panama?" I would say that there's a lot of spirituality in Panama. What would you say?
I do think that there's a lot of spirituality in Panama. And if you're talking specifically about the Indian culture, there is a lot because most, like I said, most of their gather ups or their meetings, other than, like I said, the movies or hanging out in the restaurants, are for religious traditions. So an interesting fact is that my parents form part of the a really really small reduced community here in Panama, which is more like a spiritual way. I would call it because it's not a religion per se, because their religion is Hinduism, like we already stated at the beginning of the YouTube podcast. Um, so, like I said, they're Hinduism, but there's a spiritual way which is called Radhaswami, and there they have to follow a few. They have to follow, let's say, the requirements that they have to follow or the guidelines they have to follow in order to perform part of this spiritual way, which is meditate every day for 2.5 hours. Don't drink or smoke or use any type of drugs, be vegetarian and don't hurt any type of animal, and live a moral and ethical life. So part of that community is very very spiritual, and the other ones as well, I call them Muslims or call them Hinduism or call them Sikh or the ones that are on the temple, they go they follow their traditions most of the times to the letter. So I would say they are pretty spiritual as well, and that's part of the characteristic of the Indian culture. It's the debate whether spiritualism versus materialism. And Hinduism, or not only Hinduism, but the Indian culture itself believes a lot in one's spirituality. That means that connecting with oneself and with um, at the same time connecting with something bigger than yourself. This idea that we call God or the superior being.
That's super interesting. Amazing Oski says, Santosh, as a psychologist, are most of your clients Panamanians or Indians?
Well, in my case, most of them are a melting pot. They're not actually. I don't have any Indian ones to answer that question. So I would say Panamanians, but not only Panamanians. I also have Americans. I also have Colombians, Venezuelans. So yeah, out of all the countries, but not Indians, ironically.
Are you starting to realize that people are now more concerned about their mental health? Because I feel like me personally, growing up with Panamanian parents, mental health wasn't something that no one really focused on, right? It was like you were going through whatever meltdown that you were going through. Oh, you get over it, you move on. How important do you think mental health now in this day and age is important in Panama now?
It's so important, and people still don't realize how crucial it is, because there are these stereotypes that if you go ahead and go to the psychologist or to the psychiatrist, you are crazy. That's the first thing that comes up to their mind, or that you have a mental health issue, or a disease in your brain, or people have this exaggeration that you go ahead and if you go to attend yourself with a mental health professional, something's wrong with you. And that's not completely true. There's so many things that involve mental health. Like, it's important to get attended because every one of us has their own issues, their own personal life experiences that we go through, and it's hard. Living is not easy. Going through life is a process, and there are so many changes that come in the way that sometimes you need someone else to give you a different type of perspective, so you can go ahead and analyze that situation on a different way. So mental health right now, it's a priority. It should be a priority in schools, and it should be a priority for everyone, not only in Panama. I think it's worldwide. We had a recent crisis with the pandemic that will bring up new situation, new issues with our children, with our friends, with our peers, with our family members, that we are not going to know how to handle. And the only way is getting help. The only way is getting help. And that doesn't mean that you're weak minded, like some people think. Not at all. The strongest thing you can do is realize issues in yourself and asking for help.
Guys, I just want to tell you the same way Santosh is in this video is exactly how he is in person. Like, he's very like chill. He's very like calm. He's like, no more, you're gonna get cured. Like, you just feel at peace. Like, he's old. Exactly what you see is what you get. So I just wanted to point that out there because I know sometimes like people put on for the cameras, but what you see is exactly what you get, guys. He's exactly like this in person. Okay. Panna Black says, "Why is it so easy for immigrants to assimilate to Panamanian culture, in your opinion?"
Well, first of all, because since approximately 180 years, Panama has been having immigrants here in their country. So there have been immigrants from all over the world in Panama for about 180 years, and it's something that has been normalized so much in the Panamanian culture. Whenever you're in school in Panama, the first thing they teach you in the social sciences classes is that Panama es un crisol de razas. It's a melting pot. That's the first thing they teach you. And they teach you that so you can go ahead and understand that it doesn't matter what gender you are, what race you are, what ethnicity you are, where you were born. It's just divisions. That's just lines that we humans created to divide ourselves. But it doesn't take away the fact that if your skin is black, or if you are Chinese, if you're Indian, if you're from Asia, if you're from Europe, that means that you should be treated differently than that any human being should be treated. No, so that's why I think that it's so easy for them to adapt into this culture, because there's already a process that has been part of the Panamanian culture, of involving other cultures, involving other religions into their lifestyle. That's why I think Panamanians like it here, and Indians or Jamaicans or Chinese people stay here because they like it. Like I said, it makes them feel comfortable. And part of that comfort comes from the accept and the tolerance of diversity in the world.
Correct. Richard Allen says, "Are there any Kemetic spiritualities in Panama?"
Sorry, Richard. I really don't know what is a Kemetic spirituality. Do you know what that is?
So let's Google it. I kind of know what it is more or less, but let's see. Comedic, comedic, what? Okay, wow. Comedic. All right, so it says Kemetic spirituality is the Kemetic Orthodox believes that that the parent god or gods create the Ba, an internal soul of the candidate, while the beloved gods, of whom there can be any number, have taken personal interest in helping the individual through their life.
Well, I'm not sure if I can answer that because I had no idea that existed until a minute ago.
So basically, it says that people, followers of Kemeticism, generally worship a few gods, Mat, Baset. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Among others, but recognize the existence of every god. This worship generally takes the form of prayer and setting up altars, but there are no set guidelines for worship. So again, it sounds kind of like Santeria, Yoruba religion. I think it's like the Richard. If you want to specify or explain it a little bit better, because based on this definition, I'm getting that you have a belief of more than one God, or you believe more than one God, that there are more than one gods. All right. Senya Warrior Keen said, I'm loving learning about Hindu culture in Panama, but at the same time, it's encouraging me to also participate in Black American culture in Panama as well. I do want to say that Black American culture does not exist in Panama because there aren't Black Americans in Panama. I mean, there are Black people that are American that are moving to Panama, but Black American culture doesn't exist. Black American culture only exists in America. Just to put that out there. Would you say that? Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I think that there's not a huge Black, I think there's a huge African American community here in Panama, but Black Americans, I'm not sure if there are that many.
And African American, I would really use the term as Afro-Panamanians because Afro-Panamanians aren't Americans, if I'm making any sense.
Got it.
Right? You know what I'm saying? So what you would consider an African American, the reason why the term African American even came up in America is because Black Americans needed a way to identify themselves because they didn't know who they were because of the whole slave trade and them being brought to America. So they decided to call themselves African Americans because they were descendants of Africans that were brought from Africa to America. That's why. But as far as African American or Black American culture in Panama, I don't really think that exists. This Afro-Panamanian culture, that is something that exists, but not African American culture or Black American. Guy Needs Brown Sugar says, I'm learning so much. I love it here. I'm glad you love it. I'm glad that we can give you guys content that is educational and that you guys are learning, and it's not a bunch of nonsense, because social media, you could get wrapped up in a bunch of nonsense. I know, because sometimes I get wrapped up in nonsense too. Richard Allen said, it's the teaching of knowledge of self from Kemetic Egyptian. Okay, so I'm gonna say that doesn't exist in Panama. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I do think, I'm not sure if that exists at all in Panama, but it's something I like what I heard from the knowledge of the self, and I like the definition that you read on Google previously. So I'm gonna research it to see what I can learn about it, but I'm not sure if it exists. I don't think so. I highly doubt it. At least as a community, no. Maybe someone practices it, but a community, I don't think so.
Senya said Kemet equals ancient Egypt. Okay, so it's, I guess, ancient Egypt religion. Football Knot says, do you believe Indians don't have enough representation in Panama?
I mean, I do feel they are represented greatly because, like I said, they do have their culture, their tradition, they have their society, they have the structure, what I feel like understanding this question, or what I think from this question, is that it doesn't get the advertisement or the social media. Like, people don't hear about it everywhere. Like, if we compare it with the Chinese New Year, it's broadcasted all over the news. Everyone knows
Yeah.
about it. I hear about it. But when there's an Indian festival, not many people realize it. Like, there's no specific media that's showing up or that's putting it on the TV or as advertisement. But I do believe it's represented. The thing is that you have to know, like, marketing wise or representation wise, like, it's publicly open out there for everybody to know. I'm not sure if it's that. I think you have to go ahead and look it up, or do your research, or talk to people, or do your own research, basically, to learn about the Indian community here in Panama. But it's not broadcasted all over the media, for example.
Yeah, because I haven't seen any person on TV that's of Indian descent. Like, you know, like like the people, like the host. I haven't seen any Indian host on any shows. The only representation I think this person came in late was, for those of you who came in late, as far as representation in 2022, there was an Indian girl that represented Panama in Miss Universe. And she is Indian because she was born in India, but she was represented Panama. So I mean, they aren't represented on mainstream media, but you do have an Indian that went to Miss Universe to represent Panama. So
Yeah, yeah, and we also have the Indian society, for example. The only representation I've seen, like, publicly on the media or on the TV, is every year in the Teleton, where the Indian society goes ahead. They do their dances, they donate, they give a speech, and yeah, that's a media representation I can think about, but not like everyday situation.
okay. Hinduism originally grew from Kemetic Egyptian teaching, many similarities between the two. Morris Campbell says, when I was little, I have so many Indian friends in school. Sadly, most of them have left Panama for the U.S. or the U.K. Richard Allen said, that's it. Coming with my prayer towel. Amazing Oski says, V Girls' lives are always educational, and lately they have become more and more interesting, fun, and educational. We need this. Thank you so much. Respect. Thank you, Richard Allen. I am said, speaking of representation, do you think Indians should be represented in the government? I think you came late because he already did mention that there is an Indian in politics, but I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah, yeah. If I think about it as representation, if the question means what I'm thinking, it means like the Indian community be represented inside the government. The answer would be no. I think that would be cause more division than what it would bring benefits, because then the Chinese community will also want to have their own laws and regulations in the government, and then the Jewish community would also like their own privileges and their laws that only apply to themselves, and that way with every other culture. So I don't think that they should be represented in the government in the sense that specific laws or specific regulations should be created for them. I don't think that, but it's nice to have the representation, like an Indian descent person on the government. That's what I like.
Okay, perfect. Senya says, or Zena, she said, Indian weddings are so cool. I saw one recently at the Marriott there. Amazing. It is amazing. I've seen them on Indian Matchmaker, I told you, and I love them. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is so cool. I am says, well explained. Thank you. Football, not soccer, 88 says, have you seen any cases of colorism or self-racism cases with mixed or full Indian people?
Well, I think that's the answer that I gave a few minutes ago. Like, for example, talking about my specific case, I haven't been a victim of racism or xenophobia. What I have been a victim of is, like I said, ignorance and a combination of ignorance and stereotype, where they usually categorize Indians into certain part of stereotypes, or they try to make jokes which are not really that funny and they don't make any sense with those stereotypes. But as a victim of racism, no. And if I think of someone else, I like a friend or a family member that I can think about, or part of the community that has fall into racism. I personally, me, I haven't heard about anyone. And like I said, I think that's because of the perspective or the perception that people have from the Indian community, which is in general a good perception.
Richard Allen says, "Do you see Indians dating Panamanians?"
Yes, yes, I have seen many cases in which my generation, people from my generation, and in fact, the generation of my brother dating Panamanians or dating Colombians, Venezuelans, any other religion or culture that's not only the Indian culture. For example, like I said, my brother got married to a Panamanian a few months ago. So, yeah, it happens.
Is she Panamanian Indian or just Panamanian?
She's just Panamanian.
Okay. Morris Campbell said, "What was the name of the Indian woman that represented Panama in 2022?" How do you pronounce her name again? Meher
Mer,
Elysia?
Mer Eliezer. Mer Eliezer.
It's
Eliezer.
Mehr. You guys, you can just Google Miss Panama 2022 Indian, and she'll come up. So you can check her out on Instagram. I'm gonna wrap it up because we have been on here for 1 hour and 42 minutes. So thank you, Santosh, for your time. Thank you, everyone who have joined the live. I do want to say that on Friday we're doing another live, and we're gonna have Renato. If you don't know who Renato is the first artist to ever do reggae en español here in Panama. That is going to be super interesting. Usually we do lives on Tuesday, but because of his schedule, I had to get what I could get, and he was only available on Friday. So I'm gonna put out the flyer so you guys can tune in. I know that you guys are gonna be super excited to see that live because I'm super excited. I thought this live was amazing. Santosh, you did an amazing job as usual. And again, for those of you who want tutoring service, or if you are looking for a therapist, I will leave Santosh information in the community tab, guys. So make sure you check it out. Renato on Friday, this Friday. Yes, this Friday. This Friday. This Friday. It's okay if you're going to be in New York. It's the computer. You can log in on your phone. This is why the beauty of social media is you can log in from anywhere. Doesn't matter. Okay? Thanks, Santosh. I hope I did not misspell your name.
You
I
got
think
it
no,
right.
you got it right. So, guys, thank you always. Thank you, Santosh. For those of you who are coming in late, you're going to have to catch us on the replay that will be up. And Santosh, thank you again
Thank you
for
so much
coming
for having me.
through. You
Thank
did
you so much for
amazing.
having me. Yeah,
You're
I was really
welcome.
excited. It was really interesting. Thank you,
It
and
really
nice
was.
meeting all of you.
Bye, guys.